you, Ed. It's always a pleasure.
November 3rd, 2015.
Yes.
A lot has happened since our last airing.
Yes, it has.
I'm going to walk through the sequence that I think is relevant, and I might not have it all correct,
Okay.
but as I see it, you filed a PIA for the attorney's invoices.
Right.
And included in those attorneys' billings, actually two of them, two from different attorneys' law firms, were references to a federal subpoena.
Yes.
And that was back in May or June.
Yeah, the billings were, I think, May the 4th or something like that. May
So
the 2nd. So.
Del Mar College received a federal subpoena of some sort.
Mhm.
So you've asked for that and have been, well, it's been referred to the Attorney General as
Yeah,
most of your PIAs get referred.
Right. What I did, Ed, was there were some, what I do is during the Board of Regents meetings monthly, at the end of those, they have to print all the check numbers and the dates and so forth and what checks were written for. So I found, and I'm always keeping up with the billings from Graves Daughtry, et cetera, in Austin, Texas, and Dunn, Weathered, and so forth, and Rivera here in town. And what they did here in town was they used Graves Daughtry. I think there's a connection between Dunn, Weathered, and Mr. Augustine Rivera, who's the board attorney, and Graves Daughtry, Mr. Christian, up in Austin. So every month when they publish the agendas and so forth and information for the board meetings, it usually runs anywhere from 100 to maybe 300 pages long at times. But what they have to do is they publish a list of the checks that they've written for a certain period of time, and I always go through that. So what I do is I get the notice online, and I print the checks out, the ledger for the checks, and look for attorney billings in particular. And in there I found, for that May billing, I think that came out in June is when they paid the check to them. It was actually 3 checks to Graves Daughtry that was just under $60,000.
$60,000 for what appears to be a 30-day period.
Right, right. And then the Dunn, Weathered, and so forth, Mr. Rivera's billings there were I think $7,000 to $8,000 that month. Okay. Now I went through the list of checks after I printed them out, and one of them in particular, two items struck my attention, and those were the billings from let's see, it was May the 4th, and it says, let's see, there was one thing in here that referred to documents relating to a federal summons. And it says receipt and review of federal summons, including telephone conferences and email correspondence with HR, that's the Human Resources, and outside counsel. And the outside counsel, this was from Dunn, Weathered, Coffee, and Rivera is the name of the firm, okay? So that was $227. Well, I said, a federal summons for what? So then I looked at the same dates for the Graves Daughtry people up there, and it says, let's see, where was it in here? There was something about regarding a subpoena. Here it is. It's on the same day, telephone call, so I think that's the same $2 and 20 minutes that both firms are.
So we got our double billing there.
Yeah, they're simultaneous billings. But here it said a telephone conference with the HR person. Let's see, review subpoena forwarded by A. Rivera, legal research, telephone conference, and so forth. So when Mr. Rivera got that summons, that I guess there must have been a subpoena with it. I'm a little bit confused. I'm not an attorney. But it says, it's about, I think, essentially the same thing. Federal summons, I guess Mr. Rivera spent an hour and 30 minutes reviewing that, and then he called up there to Graves Daughtry and then they went ahead and spent the 2.2 hours.
What
on
would that
telephone.
run? What's 2.2 hours run?
It's $880.
Okay. So we're at $1,000 to read the subpoena.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, now, with those two documents, these are attached to a Public Information Act request that I sent in, and I said I label those exhibits 2 and 3, and I very simply said that I would like to have any and all documents that were associated with the federal summons referenced in the attached exhibit 2, and the reviewed subpoena referenced in attachment 3. So I asked for that information through Public Information Act request on October 13th. Then on October 22nd, there was a letter written to me from Graves Daughtry. This is Mr. Christian in that firm up there. In response to that, the Delmar didn't send anything to me. They just go and hire Graves Daughtry to do this. But there were some things in here that disturbed me a little bit. It says, on behalf of the Delmar College District, the college, we hereby request a ruling regarding the requested Public Information Act, Exhibit A, which is this, was mine, okay? It says, it gives why they shouldn't do this in one paragraph, but then it says, the request seeks documents regarding a subpoena referenced in billing statements by 2 attorneys that provide legal representation to the college. I guess that's Mr. Rivera and Mr. Christian. The reference subpoena was from a law enforcement agency. The agency serving the subpoena requested that the college not disclose the subpoena's existence for an indefinite period of time because disclosure would impede this investigation and interfere with enforcement of the law. Okay? The college has therefore not disclosed the subpoena to anyone outside the college other than the attorneys provided legal service. Now, I don't understand that when they say that they didn't want the college to disclose the subpoena's existence, okay, quote unquote, for an indefinite period of time, when it's in the billings that are public information that the attorneys, yeah, they publish it.
Now that letter is written from Graves Daughtry to the Attorney General.
Yes, this
Okay.
is from, I think this was Mr. Christian's letter. Yes, it's from William Christian, and he's with Graves Daughtry, Heron and Moody, a professional corporation.
So and we're going to have to infer a lot of things here because we don't know much.
Right.
But I see an inference of a federal law enforcement agency
Right.
issuing some sort of subpoena to Delmar College.
Yeah, well, that's what it's black and white right here.
For information
Yeah.
on something that is a law enforcement issue,
Apparently.
federal law enforcement.
Yeah.
I don't
And-
see
and-
anything good coming out of that.
No, and the thing that is so, none of this is humorous. I mean,
Oh,
don't
no,
take it in the wrong vein, folks. But I find this.
It's horrifying.
Well, I'm perplexed, and because, here they're publishing this, and I've got the copies right here of the billings that were paid in June for the May 4th statements, and then I'll read it again. The agency serving the subpoena requested that the college not disclose the subpoena's existence for an indefinite period of time. Well, they did it when they provided me with the billings. You'd think that they'd redact that.
They redact a lot of things.
Yeah, well, but then, I had another response of 99 pages that was held up for about 2 weeks past when it was due, because they said I had to pay for 66 pages that needed to be redacted out of 99 that I requested. And there wasn't a single redaction in any of it, Ed. I mean...
So they were able to buy another 2 weeks by saying that it was
Yeah.
redaction.
Okay, and then they say, upon receiving the instant public information request. Now, I don't know whether it was instant. It was pretty close after I got the billings. Okay, the college notified the law enforcement agency. The law enforcement agency confirmed that it wishes the college to withhold the requested information because the agency's investigation is still active and public disclosure of the requested information would interfere with that active investigation. Now, if something's going on over there, folks, and the feds are investigating things, and that's gonna impede a federal investigation, I'm gonna be the last person in the world to wanna interfere with that. I wanna find out what's going on.
Let them complete their investigation and publish the results.
That's right.
Usually that's published with is it called a perf walk?
Yeah, something like that. It baffles me at times what's going on with that, so.
So we've got this federal subpoena in May,
Mhm.
and then we've got the end of the year comes up, which is a September 30 year end for the college.
Right.
And the external auditors are coming in to perform their annual audit, which we've got a copy of their fee letter. It's called an engagement letter, and it went up from 43,000 to
Right.
58,000.
Well, yeah.
And then Delmar hires this external CPA firm, which I think has a good reputation, for somewhat north of $250,000
Per year.
to do an internal audit function. Something we've been concerned about for a long time.
Mhm.
So we come up to year end, and then on October 7th, apparently something happened about 4:45 in the afternoon, and all of a sudden, there's no CFO.
That's right.
And September 30 is the year end.
Mhm.
October 7th, 7 days later, at 4:45 in the afternoon, we no longer have a CFO.
Sure.
And they had a special called board meeting to do something. I guess we don't know, it was all
No.
closed. But they were gonna talk about the CFO, and then it was published in the paper and then Channel 6 that they've separated.
Mhm.
But apparently that's all we know, and that happened, am I right, 7 days after year end?
Yeah.
Isn't that a strange coincidence?
And then they finalized that, this past Friday, which I think was October 30th, that's when the board, special call board meeting was.
That's correct.
That was just a couple of days ago.
That's right, they had to give 72 hours notice.
Right. And then it was closed session.
4 minutes after it started.
Yeah.
And that's only because Mr. Gordy got up and spoke.
Right. Yes, Mr. Gordy has indicated on several occasions that he wished that they would go ahead. And now that we have the in-house counsel, which came out of Dunn, Weathered, Coffey, and Rivera, and Mr. Rivera has been the attorney for the Board of Regents for the past, at least a decade, I think.
Somewhat near that, and honestly, he's got a Yale undergraduate and a Stanford law degree. Really strong background for a community college attorney.
Well, I don't know about need for that, but, I mean, now he is the in-house counsel, they call him at Delmar College. He's on the payroll for Delmar College instead of through the.
That means you'll no longer have those billing statements.
That's right.
So that's all work product now.
Right.
So that eliminates one of your steps.
Right. So I'm gonna be.
You just have to go directly to Graves Daughtry now.
Right.
Well, hey.
And I can do that.
Yes, you can. But a strange set of events, because remember, 1,700 plus Delmar employees went for something like 5 or 6 years without a raise.
Right.
Under this current administration, or the prior administration, I guess.
Right.
And we no longer have a CFO, to the best of my knowledge. So under that administration, 1,700 or more than 1,700 employees were told that the college didn't have enough money to provide them with a raise.
That's right.
Yet when we analyzed their financial statements, their audited, publicly filed financial statements, we found that after adjustments, it looks like they created revenue in excess of expenses for an 11-year period of somewhere in the neighborhood of $68 million.
Right.
And we presented that at 2 board meetings, actually. And Dr. Sloan, the former CFO, now former CFO, presented what appeared to be a rebuttal, and he said, my numbers are wrong, or my use of his numbers were wrong,
Right.
because
Mhm.
even he knew they were his numbers.
Right.
So I shouldn't be using his numbers in that manner. So he used cash flow, a little different aspect than what I was using, because I said, you generated this much revenue in excess of your operating expenses. That provided you with the ability to spend it any way you want, including buying 95 acres of what appears to be wooded swampland over here. So he used the cash flow numbers, and he said the number I was presenting was wrong. They only had $28 million of surplus.
Right.
And I'm looking around at the college professors saying, do you feel better that they only had $28 million so they couldn't give you a raise?
Yeah.
And I've not gotten any positive affirmation that made them feel any better.
No, well, I can tell you as a 26, 27-year veteran faculty member at Del Mar College, doesn't make me feel any better whatsoever. In fact, I'm what did I've used this term before, red hot mad about it.
And I haven't verified his numbers, but I'm sure they come out of the award-winning financial statements that they publish. But the fact is, they generated what appears to be $68 million in revenue in excess of expenses for operating. Those are their numbers. And they told the 1,700 people they didn't give them a raise.
No. Well, you know, the man in control has been fairly consistent with about 10% a year plus a $15,000 a year performance bonus.
Now, that's during the 18% decline in enrollment
That's
from
right.
2010 to 2015. So that's another interesting aspect of that. Now, Doctor, so those are some strange things that have happened since we last met. But I am looking at what is in response to a Public Information Act request that I filed, which is a copy of the GCA custodial contract.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically your $1 million a year. It's custodians for $1 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a page at the end that says we're saving a lot of money because of it. It says you used to have 17 full-time employees in the custodian, 17 full-time custodians, and 56 part-time. So this $1 million contract saves you $460,000 a year.
I don't believe it.
Well, we're going to get those numbers because I know how much they made, and it takes a lot more than 17 to come up with that number.
Well, one thing that bothered me about that, Ed, and this pretty well confirms it, was that the director of purchasing and business, whatever it was at the time, was the one that, along with the former CFO now, were the ones that were great proponents of this, and they were going to save a lot of money. Now, it wasn't long after that contract was signed by a Del Mar College employee, that director of purchasing, et cetera, okay, that a retirement package was taken on one of the incentive packages, I believe, okay, which is a buyout.
Mm-hmm.
And then since that time, it has been indicated to me that that former purchasing director was as a consultant for Del Mar College, and then I found out he's also one of the main consultants nationwide for GCA services.
Oh, he consults for both. That's what we've heard.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's what I've heard. And then I know that there was a person, and it was just real strange, that had a relative that lives in Kansas. The relative goes to Colorado in the summer to camp, and called the person that resides here, a sister, and said, guess what, I ran into somebody here in the campgrounds in Colorado that worked at Del Mar College when they found out that I had a tie back to Corpus Christi. And so he indicated then that he was the, not maybe the chief consultant, but a heavy consultant for GCA services.
A paid consultant.
And then we've had somebody here that saw the motorhome that the man's driving around with a big BMW convertible strapped to the back of it. And it's quite clear that motorhome, they took the model and the number and so forth and said that the value of it is right around $750,000.
Dragging a $100,000 car behind.
Well, $50,000-$60,000 Beamer. So, anyway, something that doesn't smell or pass my smell test.
Sure seems strange, but let's just look at round numbers here. $1 million a year is basically what they're paying. Now, I've got the 2008 salary for all Delmar employees, and it hadn't changed much since 2008 because nobody got a raise.
Nobody got a raise.
So, I'm seeing most of these full-time people, and not the supervisors, the employees, were making $25,000 or less a year. So let's just use a round number of 25,000. So you get 4 of those for 100 grand, or 40 for $1 million. 40 full-time employees. Oh, you only cut 17 full-time employees and 56 part-time.
Well, let's say that they were making $30,000 a year.
Still doesn't cut it.
No, if they were making $40,000 a year.
Not even close.
Okay.
Wow.
Uncle.
Huh.
And now we have, I mean, there's some wonderful people over there working for GCA, folks, don't get me wrong. But those poor people are minimum wage, hourly workers, and they're part-timers. So out of that, they're not paying benefits.
It's not a career path.
No.
It's like McDonald's. You don't go there to retire.
Well, I had one of the permanent ones before this happened. Let's call him Mike. And he'd been there for almost 20 years. He was retired from the service. I won't say which branch. He was one of the best custodians, hardest working men I ever met in my life. Very pleasant, and we had him trained to take care of spills in chemistry labs and that kind of stuff. But anyway, it was within 2 weeks of his retirement eligibility from Delmar College is when they cut him loose.
That's absolutely horrible.
And then we've got administrators that propose, they're great proponents. They grew up in this neighborhood with Delmar College employees.
That's just horrifying.
And then they fired 17. Well, the 17 I think were custodians, and they had 6 or 7 groundskeepers.
That's a different calculation.
Yeah.
And that is 5 full-time employees and 10 part-time groundskeepers. And they saved $260,000 in that deal.
Then again, at $25,000-$30,000 a year. Well, even how many did they say were full-timers?
5 full-time.
Okay, so five times $25,000.
$125.
Okay. And then the part-timers?
They must be working like 39 hours a week.
Well, the whole thing just doesn't make sense.
Those numbers.
Well, I've always questioned Delmar College math, not the math department, but the mathematics used by the administration.
And I can always refer back to the letter I got from Miss McDonald that said if I wanted those 7 general ledger detail printouts, it was going to cost me $26.7 million.
Take 20 years to get it.
Oh, 120 years.
120 years. Yeah, that was classic.
And we did negotiate that down.
Right.
It took 14 minutes, and that was with Augie Rivera.
Yeah.
It took 14 minutes to negotiate from 26.7 to 0.
Well, I think what the taxpayers out there need to realize is it doesn't take much of bringing the truth to the surface to get things done, folks. I mean, how long did it take after that hit the news?
Well, after Rick got a hold of it, stuff started flying over at Delmar.
Right.
And we got an email saying there was a mathematical error.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And then somebody went on TV and said over and over it was math error.
Mm-hmm.
on the local TV, but then in Fort Worth, when they interviewed her,
Right.
it was something different.
Oh, yeah. Well, there was an excessive amount of information.
7 general ledger detail accounts, yeah.
Well, there's another thing that needs to come out in public. In August of 2013, I requested a Public Information Act request, or I filed a Public Information Act request for certain information concerning the write-offs that the CFO was conducting for bad debts. And we got a 5-foot stack of paper. In that, I requested any information concerning the collection activities for any of those debts. So when we saw that, there was no evidence anywhere that they had ever tried to collect any of that money. But the first one we ran into was a single sheet of paper, and the write-offs were a little over $185,000 worth.
Third party.
Third-party write-offs. Okay. Now, of that, 2 of them stuck out in my brain. There was $89,000 that the Coastal Bend Council of Governments owed Delmar College, according to Delmar.
According to their records.
Okay. And according to Delmar's records, it was $54,000 some odd dollars for Texas A&M University, Kingsville. So we concentrated on Kingsville first, and actually, in the initial thing, they said that they had no idea what that was all about.
That's what they told us.
That's what they were told us. And then all of a sudden, everybody went silent with that. And then, when I requested more specific information from the Coastal Bend Council of Governments, I said, I want to see all the paperwork. And what we did was I filed that, and you filed one with the council, and asked for their records. And they ignored us for, I don't know how many
I got a
months.
full year.
Yeah.
They ignored me for
Yeah.
a full year.
So finally, we went and blew the whistle at the Texas Attorney General's office, and they wrote the Council of Governments and said, thou shalt provide them with any information related to those write-offs. Well, we get the letter from the AG's office to the Council of Governments, and then along with that, they attached it's a signed statement.
Like an affidavit.
Affidavit, yeah, from a guy over there that's the head guy or the person in charge of public information and so forth, records at the council. And he said after an extensive review and search, they have no documents at all related to that $89,000 debt that was written off by Delmar. So then I turned right around and I wrote Delmar and said, okay, I want all documents that you have associated with the Council of Governments write-off. Now, they sent me, I think it was 30 some odd pages of information along with the contract that the council made. And what it was, they contracted to have the criminal justice people train law officers for the 9 counties that were in the council.
Okay, so who signed the contract for the council of government?
The same guy that said he didn't have any.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Same man. I'm not going to divulge the name. If y'all want it, call me up. I'll be glad to give it to you.
Huh.
Again, if something doesn't pass the smell test,
My goodness.
and of course, you can't get anything from A&M. Now, there were a bunch of students and stuff involved at A&M with some grant, and I don't understand what it was, but there were about 60 pages.
Looked like remedial education.
Yeah, right. And I think that there were professors that went down to Kingsville from Delmar College that were the developmental, remedial, whatever you want to call it, those instructors.
Now, Andrew from Channel 6 went down there, and his initial visit with his camera, they were very concerned. And then there were no more visits because he was kind of uninvited.
Right, that's right.
So that seems odd.
Yeah. So something's up.
And you know, it may not all tie together, but we start out with that federal subpoena, and we have a termination of a CFO for whatever reason. We certainly don't know what it was.
Don't know.
We've got debt that that wasn't collected, that, I believe the words were exhausted all collection methods.
That's right. That's exactly what the man said.
And you asked for green cards, which are the return receipt request, in your initial PIA request, and there were none. So I wanted to make sure, so I asked specifically for them.
Right.
There were none. Then I asked for lawsuits, all lawsuits filed in collection matters for the college for 10-year period. They said none exist.
That's right.
So I'm wondering what that term meant, exhausted all collection efforts.
Well,
We mailed a statement? I'm just trying to,
I don't know yet. You got me. You're the accountant, not me. I haven't figured this one out at all.
I know how to collect a debt, and that ain't it.
Well, you know, I'm concerned. I've got I think a track record in this town of being inquisitive about my tax money and so forth and so on. And then, you know, I think it's quite an honor that the Taxpayer Association bestowed on me a couple of years ago when asked me if I'd, you know, step up as president, which I still am. But I'm real concerned about it, folks, and I think you should be too. So my suggestion is, you know, find out who your regents are. If you need to email me, I'm real easy to find. It's just gsansing@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to give you the email addresses of all the board members, Delmar College Board of Regents members, and just ask them.
And let's point out in their own audited financial statements, they had 3 years in a row that they generated in excess of $10 million more in revenue each one of those 3 years.
Right.
More revenue than operating expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that the taxpayers were taxed $10 million more. They're supposed to have a 1.5% contingency.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than having a $12 million surplus, revenue over expenses, they should have had a $1.2 million surplus.
Right.
And I'm perfectly okay with the 1.2 million. That 12 million doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Well, I just want to know where the money is.
And we know at the end of last year in their audited financial statements, their unrestricted cash balances were $44 million. And they had a couple of different restricted cash balances. So we know there's a lot of money there. We know that they purchased a lot of assets, the 95 acres, I believe the music building.
Music building, yeah, the new addition.
So we know where some of it is. We certainly don't know where all of it is.
No.
They are audited financial statements, and auditors, as a general rule, do a very good job. But they have a materiality limit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that if it's $100,000, it may not be material.
Right.
So they won't do a lot of investigating. And that's why you need an internal auditor.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a materiality limit.
Mm-mm.
They have a different perspective than the external auditors. And now, for slightly more than $250,000 this year, we have an internal audit function.
Right. Well, I hope they're not tied. You know, I'm a skeptic these days. There are too many good old boy ties over there to suit me.
And this external audit, the CPA firm is from out of town. So I feel pretty comfortable with them. Now, I'm not comfortable with paying that kind of money for part-time internal auditors. Now, I think they're very good, very well qualified.
Okay.
But I also think that for $200,000 in Corpus, you can hire a well-qualified person.
Right.
And you don't have to pay for the hotel, the travel.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, and it's disturbing to me to sit at a board meeting and listen to one of the board members have to quiz our former CFO about why he has the ability to review contracts and hire people to do these different projects.
I think he was approving those contracts.
Yeah. And
Without the board approval.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed, and I saw that on 2 separate occasions.
I did too. I sat there with my jaw dragging the ground.
That was more than interesting. And the reaction of some of the board members was also intriguing.
Right. Well, you know, that just until recently, the last 6 months, I don't remember any board member ever questioning, you know, the books and so forth at Delmar College. And, you know, I think that with all the shenanigans going on, I think I would have been paying a little bit more attention to it than that.
I'm not gonna say any names, but after I gave one of my 3-minute presentations, one of the board members said to Dr. Sloan, the CFO at the time, said, "We weren't surprised by the surplus, right?" No. That would not be right.
Yeah.
The surplus should have been 1.5%, not 12%.
And Regent, whoever, if you've got people there that are telling you what's going on, and then another regent or two says, well, we don't want to hear from the public, you know, we don't want to hear anything negative about this.
Isn't that why we elected them? Those are our elected
Yeah,
representatives.
well, you know, I'd heard in the past with some of them, you know, well, we're not paid, so we're you know, we're doing this for nothing.
They certainly are.
But that's not why you elect a
that's
public official.
That's a choice. They made
That's
that
right,
choice.
That's right.
They knew that going in.
Right.
And if they do the job effectively, it's probably pretty time consuming.
It would be, yes. I don't know, you know, it's been a wild and woolly 2 years plus.
And there's been a lot of events happen in those 2 years. Based on the federal subpoena, I think it's not over.
Right.
We don't know what's going on.
Well, I just find it very intriguing that here I get, you know, the Attorney General gets a letter stating that the agency says, please don't let anybody know about the filing of that or whatever, and then here it is in the buildings, it's wide open. And I guess they figure that some people just can't read or reason, I don't know.
By this point, they know you get every copy of their invoices.
Well, it went from very specific billings, you know, Professor so-and-so, this was concerned with the problem they had with that professor or this company or whatever. And now, you know, I mean, they bill thousands of dollars at one sitting with telephone calls to the president about college matters. What matters? Okay? I mean, I would think that the law would require a little bit more explanation and in-depth than that, because I feel slighted as a taxpayer, folks. If just because a guy said he was on the phone talking about, you know, work-related matters, I mean, I want to find out what in the world's going on. They owe
$400 an hour.
Yeah, they owe the taxpayers of the district down here, and the state and feds and everybody else that's contributing money, and the students paying tuition. They owe it to us to let them know what's going on over there. You know, unless somebody's going to prison and they have a true criminal investigation, then I can see them withholding that information until the investigation is complete. But I want to know what the investigation has uncovered.
And,
I mean, I have that right, I think.
well, and it should be, in my opinion, it should be a transparent administration.
Yeah.
Why try to hide everything?
Yeah.
And based on the reaction to all the PIAs,
Right.
they defer. Mine were averaging, what, 102 days?
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, the whole thing is about as transparent at Delmar College as 3-foot slab of, you know, wall of concrete.
Mhm.
That's how transparent that is. So, but I'm gonna keep chipping away.
And that goes back to one of my original PIAs where I got the $26.7 million quote. That was meant to tell me to stay away.
Oh, yeah.
Don't think that you can mess with us.
Right. Well, that's the same philosophy that the city has, you know, with their attorneys. I know Mr. Carlos Valdez sat there and said that they were gonna go after the Friends of the Coliseum for $60,000 on a $30,000 bond. I was one of the 5 that was involved with that suit filed against me by the city. But Mr. Carlos Valdez, the then city attorney, stood right there in court and said, well, we can't have citizens filing lawsuits against us, so we're going to discourage that. That's the reason we're filing the lawsuit against the Friends of the Coliseum.
And I've been involved in enough lawsuits to know that 30,000 or 60,000, doesn't matter. It's not enough to sue about.
That's right.
Everybody loses on that deal.
Right.
The guy that wins has already spent the 60,000 bucks.
Right.
So that is a dumb approach.
Well, and then, you know, we can't get information now, and I'll discuss this on another show, what's happening in Corpus Christi, which is Taxpayer Show, about ADA compliance and what this new city attorney's been doing. He keeps quoting documents from the Department of Justice and the Americans with Disabilities Act, but he won't provide the hard copy.
And, well, you know, we can't vote this year because none of the voting places comply with the ADA. How long has that law been in effect? 35 years?
Yeah, 1990, I think.
You know, a long time.
Yeah, almost 30 years.
Whoa.
It may have been going past that, but, you know, it's incredible.
And my father was in a wheelchair, and he had a little cart.
Yeah.
So that, I look at that ADA and say, we need to comply with that,
Yeah.
because those people have to get around. You can't get off that cart and walk around the tree.
Well, you know, the city had a ramp down there that was a handicap ramp. Then it was closed down because it was found out the angle was too steep after some people couldn't get their motorized wheelchairs up there and so forth, or walk up it with a walker. And then they had an extensive rebuild on it, and then we found out the other day that it's still blocked off on both ends of it. And we said, why? Well, the contractor didn't conform to ADA compliance. Apparently, this is this is what I've been told on the second go around. So can we go back to that contractor? And I'm going to find out how much money it was spent to screw it up again, so to speak. I mean, there's no end to it.
I deal with contractors in my business, and you build it to the spec.
Yeah.
If it's supposed to be a 15-degree angle,
Mm-hmm.
and you build it at 22 degrees,
Yeah.
you better rebuild it.
That's right. At your expense.
Well, yeah, you've already been paid.
Well, look at what the city does around here. I mean, you get a street paved, and you know it's 3 months to 6 months, a year later, you got big chug holes in it, and the city never goes back on those contractors. And Delmar used to do that with the roofs. They had a roofing company that was in, you know, I'll just say it, in cahoots with the then director of physical facilities. And when it started leaking, they didn't come in and repair it, you know, under warranty.
You get a 25-year warranty on a roof.
Right.
Now,
Not Delmar.
now on a street, and I know what they do, they set some specs, and then if it starts failing, they come in and run a core on that thing.
Yeah.
And see if it meets the specs. And I know this for a fact because I have a client that is jackhammering out $400,000 worth of concrete right now. Something didn't meet specs. So that's what happens when it doesn't meet specs.
That's right. That's what should happen.
And you come in, you run a core, you say, this is not what I paid for. And these streets are just, even the good ones are just falling apart.
Yeah, well, they're not good ones to begin with, that's a problem. And I know we've got soil problems down here, but, you know, and then that resurface of Ocean Drive, which was supposed to last, you know, then, you know, it wasn't a year later when there were ruts in it, it felt like driving over a wash.
It'll rattle your teeth.
Oh, yeah. I drive it every day.
That's our premier street in town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's horrifying. And then we can talk about the new RTA building.
Yeah.
I believe that's $425 a square foot to build that thing.
Yeah. Well, they're up to 32 million. There was a story in the Caller Times this morning about it, how great it is. And then I found out that they've only got less than 10% of it rented. They were supposed to have a great deal of it rented before they even put it up.
Who's in charge? Who and the people have to be accountable.
Mhm.
And
Well-
in every organization. Now, well, let's take Delmar. You've got, the board is elected for oversight.
Mhm.
Only one person reports to the board, that would be the president.
That's right.
It's real crystal clear how the organizational chart works.
Mhm.
If you have a boondoggle that costs the taxpayers millions of dollars, somebody's responsible.
Oh, yeah.
And, well, then you ask why. What would be an incentive for them to do something like that? And that's where you get federal subpoenas, I guess. I'm not sure.
Well, it's gonna be interesting to see. So, you know, I hope the feds don't come down on me and say, hey, you know, you're spreading this stuff around. But I mean, it's public I got it under public information, folks.
You didn't spread it around, it was published.
That's right. It was published in the Board of Regents meeting
That's
notes.
the last thing we want to do is to cause a problem with the investigation.
No, if there's something going on over there wrong, folks,
If
I'll
we have
find
any
out about it
information
later.
they need, we're more than happy to assist. Doctor, I think we've run over our 30 minutes.
Well, that's okay. We can film it all. And then I will say that we've got some concerned citizens because the Mayor Street was the first one that was rebuilt here lately.
One of the benefits of having that no-pay job, I guess. One of many benefits, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, it's 9,000 a year for a
That's
mayor.
almost no.
Plus phone and mileage.
Well, that probably adds up. And
Well, you know, what can I say?
Doctor,
Okay.
it's been a good couple of months.
You're right. Well, I'm very, very pleased that somebody's listening out there.
And somebody is. Thank you so much. Email us if you have any comments or suggestions.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.